Hello and welcome to another episode of We Are Ohana Packers Edition, and I am Iowa Joe. Mike is obviously not here again. He's dealing with some real life stuff again this week. So this week I am joined by Wisconsin Sports Heroics and Gridiron Heroics co-owner and Go Dad Go co-host Robin Adams. Robin, this is twice you've been on the show already this year. You're our first return guest in a while. Uh, what's life been up to so far for you?
In addition to all that stuff in my Twitter bio, we launched Hardwood Heroics,
Hardwood Heroics.
which is
Okay,
an
so
all basketball website.
well, see, that's why I didn't know it. I'm not a basketball person, so
Oh,
I
that's okay. No one's perfect.
baseball and football have always been my things, and even when I was doing my journalism courses in college, I would go to the basketball games and I would cover the games, but I couldn't get into the game itself. So that's my one sport that and hockey are the two things that I'm not big into at all.
I don't get hockey. Don't get it at all.
It happens, but anyway, this is basically what we're going to call the season finale of uh the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. So we're going to do our lovely titled OPEEs, the Ohana Packer Edition end of season awards. Uh, our staff writer Joey Van Zumeren did a nice write up a couple of weeks ago about the awards from our group of writers there, but we're going to go ahead and do the podcast edition of it. So there are multiple categories. We're going to get into it, but first there is some news to be talked about this week, and the hiring of our new defensive coordinator. Oh, I just brain farted on his name. It's Halfley, Jeff
Jeff
Halfley.
Hafley.
Jeff Halfley. See, I don't normally run the show, so I these brain farts are going to happen more and more. I need my Kawano back. But yeah, Jeff Halfley. He was the head coach for Boston College, and before that, he had multiple stops as coordinator, and I believe he was mainly a defensive back coach before.
Yep.
I think he did a little bit with the linebacking core.
He was the cornerbacks coach for the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep. And
Worked
then
with,
he did a little bit of the
Shannon.
same with the Browns because he worked with Pettin and with the Browns.
Yep, he did. Yeah, he was cornerbacks coach with the Browns. I saw part of the interview that he did. It was really funny. Before he went to Cleveland, he spent 2 weeks as a coach with the Buffalo Bills.
I saw that too.
Because they hired him to be on Pettin's staff there. But then Pettin got hired as the head coach in Cleveland. And he showed up, and everyone he was going to work with in Buffalo went with Pettin to Cleveland. So they were like, you want to go to Cleveland too? And he goes, yes. So he's like, I was a coach in Buffalo for 2 weeks. He got a paycheck from them. So
well, there you go. That's all you can ask for.
Right.
I mean, in my opinion, I have no issues with the hire because obviously I don't know him too well. I kind of mentioned this last week with Nick that it's not like that I know every coordinator and position coach that ever coached in the NFL. So it's not like he's a name that I'm used to. So I it's one of those things that you just got to roll with the punches and see what happens. But from the things that he's done, it sounds like he kind of fits the Packers better than what Joe Barry did because he's a little bit more aggressive. The big thing that Joey put in his article and a lot of other people are saying is he adapts better than what Joe Barry ever did. So what are your feelings on him being brought in as the defensive coordinator?
I mean, like you, I'd never really heard of him up until the signing. And I bet you Tom Silverstein didn't either. But anyway, aside from his NFL work, he was also the defensive backs coach and co-defensive coordinator of Ohio State.
Yep, for a year.
And they had the number one. He turned it around. It was like ranked 70th in the nation. And the year that he was co-DC, they were number one. And then when he left for Boston College, they went back to not being so good. So
Well, and the other thing that
he's
I remember is he was with Pitt, the University of Pittsburgh, when Darrell Revis was there.
yep, yep,
So he's coached a lot of top level talent.
yep. He worked with Revis, Richard Sherman in San Francisco. Yeah, a lot of good guys, borderline Hall of Fame guys, if
Pretty
you ask me.
much.
So it's very exciting. It's very exciting for Jair Alexander, in my opinion, who I thought was going to have a bounce back year anyway, because it's just the way he is.
Well, and it couldn't get any worse,
Right.
you know. I mean, dealing with the
Well,
injuries he's had
yeah,
this past season and all
but
that.
you look at his history, he had that horrible shoulder injury, comes
Yeah,
back the next year, Pro Bowl, second team All Pro. So I was already predicting that after an injury and weird year in 2023 that he was going to come back and have himself a really good year in 2024. But now with Halfley, I might pencil him in for first team All Pro next year because it's very exciting. I also, part of it, the reason why is Halfley is very much press man.
yeah.
He plays a lot of press man. Boston College played press man a lot. So that's good. Am I have been burned so much by the Packers run defense over the past 25 years that it's hard for me to be hopeful. But when I
Right.
heard 8 in the box, I got really excited.
Yeah, it's single high safety, 8 in the box, press man. They hit all the key notes for what Packer fans have been calling for a while. But
It kind of
I
makes me wonder if they're going to bring back Darnell Savage for a year.
I
Like,
could see that, but the one that I'm thinking of is I'm wondering what he'll be able to do with Eric Stokes, because we know Stokes had the one good year, but then he's had a lot of injuries and stuff like that to where he never lived up to it. So putting Stokes
well,
under
okay, but
there
it's been
and
like what? Like he got hurt
right.
halfway in last year, and then it was this year. I think it's too early to say he didn't live up to it yet.
Well, I mean, live up to his first year. He didn't
Oh,
have a
sure. Yeah.
repeat. That's what I don't mean lived up to his first round, what his status or anything like that. I meant, what we saw of him the first part of year two, and then the injuries and that he hasn't been able to replicate. I guess that might be a better word.
Yeah,
Replicate what he
that's
did.
true. That's true, and that's
Um,
fair. Yeah,
so
that'll be
yeah,
fun to see. I'm interested the hamstring thing with him and Watson. They're
yeah,
apparently seeing a specialist in Madison to figure out how to keep those healthy. And the Packers fired their strength and conditioning
yep.
coach, which is like the one time in the last like 20 years that Packer fans have been right about that. Because
Well,
all
and
year they've been calling for, firing the strength and conditioning coach. And people are like, if you knew strength and conditioning, you wouldn't be saying that. And then they fire the strength
yeah.
and conditioning coach. So
The I I
there's
I
one.
said this last week when Nick and I were talking about it a little bit, and I never did go back and look to see who tweeted it, but somebody tweeted out that they talked to, I don't know if it was like former players or if it was some other, you know, s- uh, s- uh, training staffs or whatever, but they said the Packers staff is doing archaic routines, these old routines that hardly anybody ever uses anymore, and that makes me wonder if that's why they're dealing with a lot of what they're dealing with. I mean, I know some of the guys, Christian Watson is going to be an enigma always, because he's putting up, not like receiving numbers and that, but like athletic numbers that you don't see from the typical guy with his body type.
He
Or,
is not human.
right.
An
And
average, even an above average human cannot do the things that he does.
eventually, the body just slaps you back down and says, "All right, enough. You're we got to get you back to where you should be." Or like Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is on the smaller side for the type of runner that he is. So the injuries are going to happen, but they just seem to be happening more frequently than what they should be doing compared to others in the same situation. I mean, look at Darren Sproles. When Aaron Jones first was drafted, I always compared him to Darren Sproles because they were similar in size, they were similar in styles, they were similar in ability. Darren Sproles had his injuries, but he still had a long ass career. Aaron Jones is having more injuries, and even though it looks like he's
We'll see.
having, yeah, exactly. It's kind of weird, but yes, they did fire him, and Chris Gizzy is going to be most well known for the running out of the tunnel with the flag after 9/11 more than he is going to be for being the Packers strength and conditioning coach. So, it sucks when somebody loses their job, but sometimes it's got to happen. But, going back to Halfley, uh, I'm one thing that I'm really glad that so far they're doing is Greg Williams is sticking around, because what him and the current DBs coach were able to do with the guys that they had after all the injuries, I don't think there's any way you could get rid of him unless he decided to go on and take a defensive coordinator position or some other position. So to have him Halfley on top of Greg Williams working with that defensive back coach, that's good news for Carrington. That's good news for Stokes. That's good news for Jair. They're possibly going to draft one or two more defensive backs, whether it be safety, cornerback, or whatever, in the upcoming draft. We don't know what they'll do in free agency or everything like that. Corey Ballantyne, if he's brought back, he was kind of out kicking his coverage for what we saw beforehand. But if he can continue with these guys, that's going to be amazing. But the one thing, and I've been predicting it, and it's so funny that you see this all over the place on Twitter now. It just goes to show nobody listens to me on this podcast. I've been saying it for a while. The one guy that I'm glad that they are getting away from, even though I hate to say it because he is a former Hawkeye, is Jerry Montgomery. And I've said it for a long time that he's just not lived up to what we needed to for a defensive line coach. It's time for that change, and they were able to do it. Jerry, forgive me if you happen to hear this. I love you. You're Hawkeye. We'll always have you know, that connection there. But they needed a different voice in that D line room. What
Been
are your
needing
thoughts on
those in
that
that
one?
line room for a long time.
Yeah, 2015, I think they said was when he started.
Yeah. Uh, I agree. I was glad to see him go.
Yeah,
I've talked with Gilbert on the Go Dads Go podcast a few times about the defensive line, and Gilbert, from his vantage point up at the alumni suite, goes, I know exactly what's wrong. I can fix it. And like I know exactly what needs to happen. And it's like if guys can see that, if former players can see it, like why can't you?
well, and the sad thing is when fans can outright see it, then there's some kind of issue. I mean, fans are always going to have some kind of issue no matter what, depending on their level of, knowledge when it comes to things. But when it gets to the point where alumni are seeing it, fans are seeing it, other teams are seeing it, there's an issue there.
Well, and the problem I feel more than anything was that there was no growth
You know,
from anyone on the offensive line aside from maybe Kenny Clark, who is not your average player. He's
I,
gonna
I'll,
get better.
I
Anyway,
disagree a little bit. I think TJ really grew with strides.
well, TJ might be your next Kenny, but I'm talking
Right.
about guys like Montravius Adams or
Yeah.
Dean Lowry or any of these other guys that they've had in for a year or two or three that just flatline.
Yeah.
You saw no improvement, and you just can't have that.
No.
And
No.
I'm
No.
glad that they're moving on now because they have a lot of young talent on the defensive line now with Colby Wooden and Carl Brooks, who are both just very exciting players.
Right. Now, the big question, and I see a lot of people talking about this, but Quano and I had this conversation on Twitter. The speculation is they're going to be moving to a 4-3 front. I I mean, they have the personnel to do it in theory. I just don't know if they're going to completely, being that they were so close to are doing what they were doing into the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to do a complete throwaway and redo a scheme and go from there. He's
Well,
got experience in a 3-4. I think
yeah, I
he'll run a lot of nickel where he can do whatever he wants with it.
think that's going to be the thing that you see the most is the nickel
Yeah.
with that. But I do. The fun thing is that we don't know because this guy
Right.
has been in so many systems and he's not married to either one of them. Like he's going to adapt. I feel like we finally have a defensive coordinator who's going to game plan for the opponent and not like, this is my scheme and this is what we're going to do
Yeah.
every single week.
Yeah, he's basically going to do what we kind of hoped a Pettin would have done, where he can either be a 4-3 or 3-4 depending on matchups and all that. And
Well, yeah. I mean, look at the New England Patriots Super Bowl teams, those defenses that they had. I couldn't tell you what their base defense was because they
right.
changed it every week
Yeah. So
before
I
the
mean
opponent.
that as long as he gets free reign to do what he needs to do to have a successful defense, do what you got to do. I just don't think we have to worry about him doing a full scale 4-3 switch when, we've got a team that could be contending. They were already contending this past year doing what they did 9-8. The next step is just to keep growing forward, and you can't do that by just completely wiping out an old system and trying to teach a brand new system. That's for a team that went 3-13 or 3-14 or whatever it is. Then you can do it, but not when you go 9-8 and you're a game and a half away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, and this guy strikes me as I'm going to put my guys in the best chance to succeed, not that I need these guys to fit my scheme.
Right.
That was like a lot of what was going wrong with Joe Barry and frankly a bit with Pettin before him was trying to fit guys into a scheme that just don't fit.
And I think
So
that's where the disconnect between the front office and the team happen more often because we know Goody has a type of player that he goes to get every draft. It's your guy that tests really well, the athletic freak, the high, even though they like to say they don't use RAS, they do tend to draft more guys that are high up with a high RAS score. And a lot of those guys aren't the type of guys to be putting into a Pettin system or a Berry system. The guys that need to go into a Pettin or
Fangio
a Berry,
system, if you will.
right? The guys that they need are the tryhards, kind of like Kingsley and Igbare. Where they didn't test well, but they were the guys that were going to go out and give 120% every down. Not saying that these guys that they're drafting don't do that. I'm just talking the ones that don't rely on their physical attributes more than they do what their workhorse. But anyway, what do you think? Should we get into some awards here?
Yeah, let's do some awards.
All
Haven't
right.
given
Is
out
there
any
anything you want to talk
awards.
about with the Super Bowl here? Because I really could care less about. anything to do with the Super Bowl.
I hope the Chiefs win, so all the anti-Taylor Swift people can absolutely melt down and cry.
Yeah, that would be
Other than
amazing.
that, I don't really care. I don't like San Francisco. I will never root for San Francisco in my life. I remember the Jerry Rice fumble. I
Yep.
remember every single playoff loss under Aaron Rodgers to the 49ers. I will not. I cannot root for them.
My I have a confession to make, and I've made this before, but it's not one that I make readily. I was semi a 49ers fan when I was really young. And what it
And see,
is,
Joe, it's people like you that are the problem with the world because I remember being a little kid and the Packers not being good and all my friends making fun of me because they were Cowboys fans. And then the Packers get real good and now everyone's a Packers fan. And it's like, you know what? Shut up.
yeah. Well,
Okay.
what it was is, and this is the truth. And I'm talking early when I was 4 or 5. So I mean, your loyalties jump around minute by minute, but that was still towards the tail end of the Joe Montana era in San Francisco. Well, when you're a kid, you gravitate towards the people that share your, a name with you or whatever. So I was a
Oh,
big Joe Montana fan. So it was just, you know, and then when he got traded, I absolutely despised Steve Young. And to this day, I still absolutely despise Steve Young because I felt like he took Joe Montana's job.
you
So
did.
he did,
How
but it
ironic.
just,
How ironic. Because you liked Aaron Rodgers after he took Brett Favre's job.
yeah,
And now you
yeah,
like Jordan Love and he took Aaron Rodgers' job.
it's the truth.
You have
It
shown
is.
real growth as a human.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely there. But yeah, that's and I guess you could say I wasn't really a 49ers fan. I was just a Joe Montana fan just because of the commonality with the name. But, I have my mom's family has lived in Wisconsin since like the 70s. So it was everything I had growing up was always Packer this, Packer that, Packer this. So I grew up into the culture, but I did. Somehow, some way, we ended up with a San Francisco 49ers sleeping bag, and that would be my blanket on Saturday mornings while I was watching, like the the NFL Follies. You remember the NFL Follies where they were the goofball things? Yeah.
I remember. Kind of like
So
the shacked in a fool things today.
yeah,
You would know
yeah.
about those. You don't watch basketball.
Well, I know who Shaq is, and I know it's Shaq and the Fool. So I do know names, but I'm not a big fan of the sport. Uh, I'm trying to open my document here. You can tell I'm really prepared for tonight's show. Uh, OPEEs. All right, my man. Let's start off with. We're going to start off with one of the ones that is not on the article done by uh, Mr. Joey Van Zumeren, and we're going to go I picked this one out because I know what my answer is going to be right off the bat, and it's probably going to be a common answer with if anybody that you put this one to, and it's hard for us because we're not teammates, but you can see how they are interacting with their own teammates, and this is the best teammate. So I'll go ahead and give my answer so you know where I'm coming from. The best teammate for the Green Bay Packers is obviously Aaron Jones. Jaden Reed's spoken highly about him. Everybody else has spoken highly about him. How he's the first one to go to you if there's been an issue. He's the first one. Jaden has basically said that he wants to make his plays for Aaron Jones. So when it comes to the best teammate on the Green Bay Packers, I've got to say it's Aaron Jones.
I mean, it's hard to
Hard
say
to
it's not.
disagree.
I mean, Gutekunst said in his presser this past week that he's going to be back next year because he is the heartbeat of the team.
Yeah.
Like that, like when Donald Driver retired, I think a lot of us felt like it would be a very long time until you had a career Packer. I don't think we have to wait that long. I think that Aaron Jones might be that guy. I mean, I know it's running back, it's not wide receiver, but for as much as he means to the people in that locker room and to the community, it's not. Cutting him would cut deeper than beyond business.
Definitely.
And it would be one of those moves where you would have players go, I get it's a business, but. And it wouldn't be like your usual Aaron Rodgers crying because touchdown Jesus got cut. You know, it would be a legitimate, like, yo, that dude is the reason I get up in the morning and come here.
Yeah.
Type thing. So,
well,
I
you said it
do.
yourself. It would be like if Donald Driver would have been cut, you
Right.
know, and yeah, there's no doubt about it. So I'm assuming we're on agreement on best teammate is Aaron Jones, or do you have another one you would nominate?
I'll go, but I will also. I'm also going to throw out Big E, Elton Jenkins.
Okay, yep, I can agree with that one.
Because ever since Aaron Rodgers was traded, Big E has been telling everyone who will listen that Jordan Love is him.
Yep.
And
him and Devondre have been on that train since day one. So, yeah.
So I'm going to throw out Big E because, you know, Jordan Love was named the starter and he was automatically like, this is my guy. This is my guy. Don't you talk bad about him because he's the guy. He's my guy.
So, yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. He's definitely, you know, he's fit into that long line of guys, like you were just saying with Aaron Jones being kind of like the Donald Driver. You know, I would probably put Elton as maybe like the Josh Sitton or the TJ Lang, where, you know, those were the ride or dies. There was no way around it, that they were Packers through and through. They were, you know, that's my quarterback. You don't touch that quarterback. That's my teammate. You don't touch that teammate. So yeah, I could go with that one too. So I guess my Aaron Jones isn't quite as much of a slam dunk as I figured it was.
Oh no, it is.
Even though they're like 1A, 1B there.
If you would have let me go first, I would have said Aaron Jones.
So
but for the sake of discussion, I will throw out another one.
So obviously, now we can get into the one that I'm surprised we had as big a difference on the OPEE network in the article on this one as we did, even though they're all solid answers. But I think mine was the most oddball one. So I'm going to go ahead and mention the award, and I'm going to let you pick it or pick yours, and that's the Comeback Player of the Year.
Comeback Player of the Year. Wow. There's a few.
Yeah.
There's a few you can go on there. I think the obvious answer is Rashawn Gary.
That's the one that was picked more often between us.
Yeah, I can see that being picked more than others. And it's, I mean, led the team in sacks, got his bag. So I can see that. I think I'll go with him too.
That
and also because like this is like we were just talking about guys that bleed green and gold, and that man is a Packer.
Yeah.
Like he is everything that the G stands for.
Since day one.
Yeah. So I'll go
Yeah,
with Rashawn. I'll take
3 out of
Rashawn.
the 5 guys, 3 out of the 5 of us that voted for Rashawn. Mine was the oddball one, and I will give a solid explanation. And Joey did a very good job of summing it up in the article. But I picked Quay Walker, and the
Hey,
reason I
yeah,
picked Quay Walker is because you saw real growth from him from year 1 to year 2.
you did. I wrote an article in the preseason that even got Nagler's attention. So, but it was back in the joint practices,
Yeah,
and the players were getting in fights. Not Quay Walker,
no,
and I knew. Then I was like, this man is not going to have any issues this year because like other guys getting in fights. I mean, even Big E was one of them,
yeah.
you know, and like other guys getting in fights, he would have every excuse to get in there, but he didn't. No, sir.
And you saw that a few times on the field this year too, where there were moments that had it been last year, there could have been some issues there. But you could tell he really did, and that's why he was my comeback player because he showed real growth. I mean, obviously he wasn't coming back from an injury, he wasn't coming out of retirement, anything like that. So it's not a prototypical pick if you were to ask, let's say, Silver Spoon and the other beat writers, hey, who's your comeback player? They're not going to give you what us idiot blog posters and podcasters would give you. But, you know, am I really digging my hole when it comes to that guy? I think I've been bugging the hell out of him. I'm surprised he hasn't blocked me yet.
Same.
Um, it just, it made sense. And trust me, I completely get the Rashawn pick. There was Sanjay did a Josh Myers, which in a way I can kind of understand that one a little bit too. And Joey picked Aaron Jones, which was kind of a surprising one because I'm not sure where the comeback on Jones was. I don't know if it's because
Second
he had a
half
down
comeback
year.
player.
Yeah. Um, but it made sense to me because you had the two ejections, you had the multiple penalties, you had this shows of you know frustration from him last year. You had the coaches yelling at him, especially LaFleur, and then this year he comes back a completely different guy and really. And Kawano has said it, and I've said it. He really came back and showed that he is a future star of this Packers defense.
Especially if he does get some snaps in the 4-3 and they stick him on the
Yeah,
outside. Oh,
yeah.
sign me up.
Yeah, definitely. So that that would be that's the comeback player of the year. So let's go ahead and go with we'll just do it because this one's kind of a was kind of a majority one for the group too, and it'll be interesting to see what you pick. Let's go with rookie of the year.
Rookie of the year. I'm guessing the majority picked Jaden Reed.
Yes, and that was like by a
And
far
like
majority.
that, well, and it's hard to say no because broke Sterling Sharp's rookie reception record, most yards by a rookie wide receiver in decades,
Yeah,
touchdowns. Like this, he is the next great wide receiver in Green Bay. But for the sake of discussion, am going to pick Harrington Valentine
that was
as
one
my
of
rookie of
the
the year.
yeah. Sanjay went with Carrington too, so you're in company
Yeah,
there.
because 7th round pick, forced in starting covering guys, and he wasn't perfect by any means, but he was far from outmatched.
And he was fun. Mike and I say this all the time. Carrington is basically Jair without the money.
For now.
Yeah, where he no matter what the outcome of the play is, he's always talking. And
Yes.
I can't remember who said it, but they said that it was a player that he went against, and I can't remember which wide receiver it was, but they said that even if the ball went 15 yards over our heads and there was no way of making the play, he was still in our face talking trash and doing the whole typical DB thing of the incomplete signal and all that stuff. So he's definitely going to be a fun player. It's going to be fun seeing him and Jair both on the field for the full season next year. So that was the big pick. The only other one that we had differing opinion on was
Dontavian
Mike.
Wicks.
No, actually, he was not selected by anybody. Mike went with Carl Brooks.
That's fair. He had a very nice year.
And the only other one that I could have thrown in there, and that's just because out of pure bias, and that's Lucas Van Ness. So
He also did not
but
have a good year.
he had a good year, and a lot of basing his rookie year off of what Rashawn
Sean
did, he
Gary's.
actually outperformed. Yeah,
Yep.
he outperformed what Rashawn did his first year. So, and he's another one that if they do go 4-3, I would hate to be an opposing offensive lineman.
Yeah, because he'll get a full
So,
head of steam, and you're done.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go with one that wasn't on our original list. So we got to both think of something off the top of our heads. And I didn't come up with this one randomly, but I know what I mean by it. And I have an idea on who I would pick for it. And I'm calling the OPEE the Mr. Top 10. And this is the guy that would be consistently on, let's say, like SportsCenter's top 10 plays of the week.
The highlights, Mr.
So
Highlight Reel.
yeah, Mr. Highlight Reel. And I'm going to say mine kind of matches what the rookie of the year was, and I would have to say Jaden Reed just because of the way they used him and what he was doing. But I will give my honorable mention after I allow you to pick your Mr. Top 10 or human highlight reel.
I'm going with the quarterback, Jordan Love.
Yep.
I mean, those arm angles that he was, man. They
Definitely.
didn't say Patrick Mahomes like enough.
Well, you can definitely tell who he learned under for 4 years.
Well, yes, but also just when if that man throwing the ball is a joy to watch.
Yeah.
And it was very exciting. And even in the bad weeks, the 4-game losing streak, he still had 2 or 3 of those throws a game where you're like, how? I don't understand how.
While doing the Michael Jordan tongue.
Like I don't understand the physics of your arm being bent at that angle and being able to throw that ball 70 yards down the field. So I'm going to go with Jordan Love.
And that's a good pick. That would have been one of my honorable mentions also, but my other one was kind of Dontavian Wicks, just because some of the catches he put up and some of the moves he made.
I would have left it with the guys laying on the ground after he took their souls.
So that would have been my honorable mention.
Route runner.
I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with another season under his belt. and a lot of more time with Jordan. If he can do that with the limited time that he's had, it's going to be fun seeing what he can do with more time with Jordan underneath his belt. Send him out to Cali with Jordan and the rest of the guys for an off season and let them really get into sync.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that would be Mr. Top 10 Opie. So let's go back and all right, this one I got to give Brendan a lot of credit, and Brendan, I always butcher your last name, but Zerwisky from Pick Six and Game On Wisconsin and all that. He kind of coined the phrase "boy, he did it," and I've turned it into an Opie award. It's the breakout moment. What moment really was the breakout moment for a player? And mine has changed since we did the awards. I will give my original one that was in the article, but I have a different one. The one that I did was the Romeo versus Dallas in the playoffs. But go ahead and what was your boy he did it moment?
For any player the entire season.
Any player what was their breakout moment?
I'm gonna go it over a span of 5 weeks, and it's Aaron Jones, 100 yards, 100 yards, 100 yards, 100 yards. And the reason why I say boy he did it was because up until this little playoff run and his run of 5 straight 100-yard games, which no Packers running back had ever done, mind you, there were still people saying like, "Oh, it sucks that he's not going to be on the team next year." And boy, did he shut them up.
Big time. And honestly, that wasn't even a thought process in the boy he did it. Basically, it was everybody picked something to do with the Cowboys game. It was either the Romeo versus Dallas or the Jordan versus Dallas sentiment. So that was the everybody's boy he did it. But ever since we did the award article, I've rolled it around in my brain, and it really mine's kind of changed, and it has to be the Bo Melton versus Minnesota game. He
Yep.
was the
Honestly, like those last few weeks, you could pick any receiver against any of their last 5 opponents and be like, boy, he did it.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Melton. Wicks had a big game. I think he had like a 100-yard game too. Close to it. Reed
if
did.
not close to it.
Yeah. And
yeah, so the Bo versus Minnesota, from a guy that was a 6th or 7th round pick for Seattle, getting cut, spent all last year on the practice squad, spent most of this year on the practice squad, didn't get much of a chance until, late in the season. I got to say that was his breakout moment, and it's one of those things that you love to see it happen afterwards, but I tweeted out that, man, that number 80 out there is really looking like a former number 80 that was on this team years ago. And then the following week everybody else was saying the same damn thing. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I understand it, but give me damn credit, damn it.
you're just a stupid blogger, Joe.
Yeah, I know. I'm a podcaster. I'm an idiot. I have no sources.
Right.
But
listen, I don't know what kind of awards you got, but I got one for you.
Okay, go for it.
The Next Man Up Award.
Oh.
The guy who, because there were a lot of injuries, the guy who filled in the best when the starter went down.
Okay,
there's a few. There's a good candidates.
There's 2 that came to mind right away. And I'm gonna go with the one because I've been kind of riding his hype train since he was drafted. Even though I've kind of rode the train for both these guys when they were drafted, but I'm gonna go Isaiah McDuffie. Just because for being, again, a 7th round draft pick that was only supposed to come in and be a special teams contributor and, getting thrust into the starting position because either Devondre had been hurt or Quay had been hurt or, they were just trying to do whatever. The guy played with intensity. He wasn't a pure liability in coverage. I mean, you could tell he wasn't great at it, but he still was a baller. And, let's just say for the sake of conversation, they do decide to cut Devondre at the start of the league year. I think you could roll with Isaiah and Quay as your inside backers with a rookie behind them to develop and be safe. So yeah, Isaiah would probably be my
His
guy.
college coach is now the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. Mine is Tucker Kraft.
Yep.
Mine
That
is
was a
Tucker
good one.
Kraft. Musgrave was the guy. He was like, we talk about Musgrave. He came back in time to tie the receptions record for a rookie tight end. But Kraft almost beat it in 6 weeks.
Yep.
That was not only shows phenomenal growth because they did stuff with it wasn't like Kraft was riding the bench. He just wasn't that good in the passing game.
Mike and I talked about it a lot that they were trying to build him into a Mercedes Lewis type tight end when at the beginning of the season because they were using Musgrave as their, stretch the field. Yeah. But once Musgrave went down and Tucker got to go back to do, and he even said it in an interview in the locker room, that once he got to go in and do what he was able to do in college, there was no stopping him. And that's a great choice right there. Once they put him into his comfort zone, the guy was a nightmare. So I completely agree. The other one that I was thinking on was Rasheed Walker. Because for as much as he was kind of having issues to start with, that guy has turned into a player.
Yeah, I think that they have their left tackle of the future.
Now,
everyone says they need a left tackle early in the draft. I'm like, I don't know.
No,
so. Draft one later, obviously, because you need depth. Because you're gonna lose Nyman.
He'll be
who knows about Bakhtiari.
I think the money says he stays. If he doesn't stay, he'll retire. So
I don't know. I don't know what to think about that situation. I'm just gonna let it play out.
Yeah.
And he's the guy that I hope would retire with the Packers. And it sucks. His injury just sucks.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It does. It does. I'd hate to deal with what he's dealing with, but
the reason why I didn't consider Walker though for the Next Man Up award is because he was the next man up for 16 weeks. 16 games. Like you might as well just been the guy. But you're right.
Well, but then you got to remember they were rotating him and Yash in, and then finally that rotation just stopped because it came clear that everything was clicking for him. The only thing I have to say that really disappoints me that he throughout the year is we didn't get him humping a guy on the ground, and that's the thing that I was really disappointed that we didn't get that.
Maybe
especially if it was like Hutchinson.
Oh my god!
So
maybe he's got to establish.
Yeah, he's got to get that bear mentality. This is my den, and but so all right, so that was a good one. I had never. Well, I mean, I have uh most improved and biggest surprise, but I never thought of putting it as the next man up. So that actually is a good one. So let's get in because we've been talking for a while. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of everything. We'll start with this one, and then we'll go to the next tie up one. We'll go with defensive player of the year. So, who is your defensive player of the year?
My defensive player of the year. Man, on a defense that so underperformed. The easy thing would be to pick our one Pro Bowler, Kenny Clark,
Yep.
because he obviously got there. But I'm going to pick someone I don't think that a lot of people would. Your CB1, Preston Smith. Because while everyone else was falling around him, he did not.
Yep.
Like, I think he banged up his ankle bad in one
Yeah.
game, got it taped up, and went right back out. But he matched Rashawn Gary sack for sack just about, and was put in some pretty awful situations by our former defensive coordinator.
And I would say some of his sacks were a little bit more key than what Rashawn's were too.
He was a little bit more clutch. Yeah, he was a little bit more clutch on the sacks, and frankly, I don't think he gets the recognition he deserves.
I think
So
he's
I'm gonna
finally,
call him the defensive player of the year.
and that's a good choice. That one never even popped in my mind because the thing about him is you didn't really hear out of you didn't really hear anybody talk about him, so it was
Good or bad.
right. But you're right. He did go out with that ankle injury, got it wrapped as tight as I could, and he went right back in and he played the rest of the season that way. He did have a lot of clutch sacks, so that's a good pick. Mine was actually Kenny because in the
I mean,
same kind of right,
that's,
and
that's
kind
a
of in
good
the
one.
same kind of boat that we were just talking about with Preston. He really didn't get the recognition that a lot of these other guys would, and he had a career year this year. He had 7.5 sacks, and he was playing in position where he should have been. They finally decided TJ could be the nose tackle, and they let Kenny eat up at the end, and he did. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do this next year with him. I think this is his last year on 2024 is his last contract year.
Yeah, he'll be
So
getting an extension, I am sure.
yeah. So if not, then you definitely know there's an issue up there. But yeah, he was my defensive player of the year just because it was a career year for him, and similar to Preston, there wasn't a lot of time. Now, obviously, he is our lone Pro Bowler, but what does the Pro Bowl mean anymore? So
Well, that's fair, but also like Preston, he also stayed healthy.
yeah,
Like he wasn't
yeah,
hurt. The
which
best
is good
ability.
because he's had a lot of ticky tacky injuries over his career, whether it was a groin or a hamstring or whatever.
Mhm. But yeah,
But
best ability is availability, and there he was.
um, okay, I got to throw this one in here before we do the big one because it's kind of a funny one, and I don't know what else, but the best dressed. And we've all seen these guys have some amazing outfits, and I know what mine is, and it's a common theme amongst my picks so far tonight. But I'll let you go ahead and go first. Who is your best dressed Packer?
J.R. Alexander. J.R. Alexander. Don't care. J.R. Alexander is the best dressed.
Okay, well,
Whether
mine
it
is
doesn't even have to be anything special because he'll have a special hat on or those goggles, or
the Flavor
whatever.
Flav clock, or
Man, the
whatever.
hat, like just Jerry Alexander is a walking fashion statement.
Okay, so mine went the other way, and I went with Aaron Jones
It's fair.
because he's always got some kind of fashion statement going on, especially when it comes to his sombrero and the poncho, and you got to love the dad's ashes in his necklace hanging out
Hmm.
there, and you know those two are both walking fashion statements. So my best dressed is Aaron, and there's no doubt about it. But Jair is so good at dressing up that even reporters up in Green Bay don't know who he is when he runs up on them. So, but
If they had only been a blogger, maybe they would have known.
or lived like 0.7 miles away from Lambeau, then you know. Oh, we got a last minute joinee. Is he in? Uh-oh, he's getting no signal.
Wow, that was a
Oh,
whole lot of hype for nothing.
we had an interloper.
Whole lot of hype for nothing.
Oh, a whole lot of hype. Sanjay was trying to jump in, but he's getting a no signal report. So,
That's
but
a shame.
I'm gonna go ahead and, well, he just DM'd me. So,
And that I'm going to give my award that I made up with Gilbert Brown. It's called the "You're Stealing Money" award. We've been very kind to some of these guys tonight. Like
yeah, and
highlight,
I've been trying to be.
but let's highlight some crap. The "You're Stealing Money" award would have gone to Joe Barry had he still been on the
Yeah,
payroll, but not,
or Jerry Montgomery.
or
Sad to
Jerry
say.
Montgomery. But my "Stealing Money" award goes to John Runyon Jr.,
Ooh, that one hurts.
who is
Because
such a
I'm still a
hole
believer.
on the offensive line. Bro, it's been 4 years. 4 years.
I'm still a believer though.
Bro.
I'm kind of like the Kawano on Darnell Savage type thing. Is I still am a believer.
Yeah. You
He's
know why?
he's
Because
he's
Darnell Savage actually showed that he can play when he has a competent defensive coordinator, or at least a competent scheme to play in. John Runyon Jr. has played like crap
the
since
last
he,
couple of years. I will agree, but early on he was a solid, because he's
yeah, he's a
another
solid
one of those
backup.
that he played every down. Was very rarely any kind of injuries. He's still have a heck of a pass protector. He just can't run block to save his life. But I am a ride or die with John Runyon, so that one hurts.
Well, then I steal your money too. Not
After
to
you
mention,
mentioned this,
not to mention the "you're stealing money" thing is perfect for John Runyon because his dad is the one who steals money from the players every week when he hands out fines.
yeah, that's the truth. After you mentioned this one, I have been trying to think of somebody, and I know now who I would pick. It's got to be Josiah DeGuara.
Absolutely.
There,
Absolutely.
there's
Josiah
no
DeGuara, you are stealing money.
there's no easy way to put it, because there's no he's had no positive. What, he had that one play in garbage time a few years back against Detroit,
Yep. He throws a good
and
block every once in a while.
well, no, not if on special teams he doesn't.
No, but I mean in the backfield.
Um, so yeah, if I now I have another one in mind, even though he started showing up later in the season,
Josh
but
Myers.
early on, well,
Josh
yeah,
Myers.
that one's the truth.
Stealing money.
But Jonathan Owens,
Oh, sure. Yep.
there was
But then
no
again,
redeem.
he wasn't making much money to begin with.
Right, but there
And
was no
Simone
redeeming
Biles
factors. Well,
to
yeah,
begin
we did
with.
get the
So,
Simone Biles, but there was no redeeming factors for him for like the first 6 weeks of the season. Then he kind of
that is a
started
fact.
getting a little better. But
I'll be interested to see what they do with him because he's a free agent and their only safety is Anthony Johnson Jr. So, I mean, obviously they're going to attack safety in the draft.
Even
Cameron
though they was
Kitchens
saying this
coming.
is kind of a weak draft class.
I know. That's why they're going to grab Kitchens early.
Yeah.
But
My hope is they go after Geno
I know you
Stone.
hope they get Cooper DeJean. I know.
Well, yeah, but I would rather see them pick up Geno Stone because he's a little bit more of a sure shot. I will fully admit, even though I'm a Hawkeye homer through and through, a lot of the DBs that come out of Iowa scare the shit out of me, just
Josh
because.
Jackson.
Yeah, because the system that they run at Iowa doesn't match what a lot of the systems in the NFL matches. The thing that hurt Josh Jackson, and I will stand on this to my dying day, is Iowa runs a pure zone defense.
He would have thrived under Joe Barry.
He would have thrived under Joe Barry. Had he been drafted under the Joe Barry system, he would have been a very good DB. But he was never a man DB, and it didn't work for him. Cooper, I think, is a little bit better athlete. I'm waiting to see what he runs at the combine. I know you don't rely on combine numbers, blah, 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 blah. The 40 is something you need to rely on because that tells what his long speed is going to be. And if he can't do the long speed, then he's going to end up like the rest of them. Desmond King didn't have great long speed. He's had a decent career. Micah Hyde didn't have the long speed. He's had a decent career. Josh Jackson didn't have long speed, and he didn't have a career.
Also, they moved Micah Hyde to safety.
Yeah. So, Cooper, I love him. I would be happy for him to be a Packer, but it still would scare the shit out of me. Especially if he does end up being a first rounder, like they're saying. All right, so shall we get into the meat and potatoes of our award? The big one, the big OPEE MVP of the season. And this was almost a unanimous one through the OPE's writers.
Yeah. Obviously, Jordan Love, right?
Yep. Yep. We only had one dissension, and that was Sanjay saying Aaron Jones, which in a way makes sense too, but I would have to say Jordan runs away with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if there was anyone that you would put besides Jordan Love, it would be Aaron Jones. So, yeah I'm going to go with Jordan Love because we've already praised Aaron Jones enough.
Even though he deserves more.
he deserves it all. But Jordan Love also deserves some because this is a guy that even a lot of fans did not believe in going into the season. You know, I'm not going to, things get nasty on social media.
They do.
And
it should be more called anti-social media.
But even, I won't say it was as angry as it was when Aaron Rodgers took over from.
God. Yeah.
Because Aaron Rodgers, I feel like really
burn a lot of bridges.
Wore out his welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Green, I think that there were more people relieved to see him leave than there were people that were angry. But there were people that were angry. And even the people that were relieved to see Rodgers go did not believe in Jordan Love. You know,
that's the truth.
They're like, well, I guess we'll see what happens. Worst case scenario is we get a top quarterback pick next year, but at least Aaron's gone, type thing. So, but Jordan Love overcame all the doubters, even in his own fan base, of which there were many. And then he just improved every week. There was no game where he played, you're like, wow, he looked worse than last week.
Yeah.
There were games where he had worse numbers than the previous week, but there was no game where you're like, wow, he looks worse. He is regressing. Nope. Just got better and better and better. And by the time the season's over, he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Just crazy. They did it again. Cry, Bears.
Definitely.
Cry. Your team's giving you life.
Now, I will wait till next season to see what he does because, things happen over the offseason, blah, 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 whatever. But
Yeah.
I did turn into more of a Jordan Love supporter. I will say when 2020 happened and the draft pick was called, I wasn't happy with it. I wasn't one of those that went out with my pitchfork and torch and was ready to tear down Lambeau or whatever. I thought there were other places they could have went with the pick that would have been better.
Like T. Higgins.
Well, I was thinking more like the inside linebackers at the time. I think Patrick Queen was on the board when they
He wasn't
drafted.
good until this year, though.
Right, but hindsight is always 2020 when it comes
Right.
to that shit. But there were other people I think that were on the board that made a little bit more sense that would have helped out in the long term or in the short term than what Jordan did. So yeah, I was not happy with the pick. But then it kind of started growing on me a little bit more when you started getting into a little bit more of the Rodgers antics. Because it's like, okay, well, this is a good sign that behind the scenes, there's a lot of drama. And
no one knew about it until the pick.
yeah.
And Rodgers went full on temper tantrum mode.
Yeah. So I will always be a Rodgers supporter. I know I have no receipts to pull on that because social media really wasn't a thing back when Rodgers was drafted. But I was happy for the pick because, in my view, he was being talked as like the number one quarterback on the board,
Yeah,
and
I
he
remember
fell all
that.
the way down. So I was really ecstatic because it's like, okay, well,
whoa, this is cool.
yeah,
All
Favre
right.
is 38. This guy should have been the number one overall pick, and we got him at 24.
I was sick of Brett Favre throwing interceptions in the playoffs. So,
and I was sick of the whole, well, I don't know if I've got it in me anymore. And
yeah, am I or am I not?
Yeah. So
which ended up being like the same thing that we had with Aaron Rodgers, and that was actually like the least dramatic thing.
So
we had
well, and the funny thing is we had to wait years later to get the bullshit with Favre, other than the will he, won't he. Whereas we got it early with Rodgers with his whole
Pat McAfee and everything.
So, but yeah, it just I will always say Aaron Rodgers was one of the greatest Packers, if not the greatest Packers there was, one of the top quarterbacks
Don
ever.
Hudson.
Well, yeah.
He played both sides of the ball. Sorry.
He did. No, I know. Trust me, I'm a big Hudson fan.
My guy.
He's on my Mount Rushmore for sure. But and not only did he play both sides of the ball, he played all three facets of the ball. He was a special team. Yeah, he was a kicker, he was a DB, and he was a wide receiver.
I think that Rodgers you could say Rodgers is the most talented quarterback of the Green Bay Packers.
So, but
my opinion, there's a great difference between greatness and talent.
Yeah.
As great as some individual seasons were, I don't know.
There's no way I could sit in a room and have a conversation with him. That's for sure.
Maybe I need to let we talk about carrying the G, and Rodgers talked about carrying the G, and I don't think we were talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll just put it that way.
Well, like I said, I don't think there's any world where I could sit down and have a conversation with Aaron Rodgers at this point in our lives, just because I don't think we'd make it 30 seconds. But I will always respect what he did for Green Bay. I will always respect him. I have a thing, and I have a shirt that says Packers family. I always say that once you wear that green and gold, you're your family, and he's just on that side of the family that doesn't get along with the other side of the family.
Drunk uncle that you hope doesn't show up to Thanksgiving.
Yeah, yeah, or that step cousin that you just don't want to see, and yeah. So, all right, well, that gives us our award show for the season. We were supposed to be on a 2-week break, but because of the firing of Joe Barry last week, and that Nick and I decided to have our defensive coordinator discussion last week. So we are going to be doing a 2-week break after this episode airs, so we can start prepping for our draft coverage. I know the first episode will be Mike and Brian Maffey talking safeties, and that will be released.
Brian Maffey.
Yeah, Maffey. Talk about
Just
a
kidding.
drama
Maffey
queen.
is my co-host on Go Dad's.
Yeah, I know, and he's a good guy, but I still got to get my digs in on him when I can. But yeah, they talk safety. That will be the first episode released in 2 weeks. They've already recorded it, so all I got to do is edit it and put it up. After that, we are already scheduling a nice slew of guests to talk each individual position going into the draft, and hopefully we get right there just before the draft like we did last year. After that, I have no idea what our plans are. It'll come as we think of them. But that is all we got for you today. So let's finish this out by saying I am Iowa Joe. You can follow me on Twitter at Iowa_Joe86. You can follow the show at Ohana_Packers. Robin, what you want to drop your Twitter and where they can find you at?
Yeah, Robin Adams. You can follow me on Twitter at the other Robin19. Find my stuff, Wisconsin Sports Heroics, Gridiron Heroics, soon on Ohana Packers.
Yep.
And also check out Hardwood Heroics, new site. Very exciting if you're into basketball because, hey, football's over and baseball hasn't starting for a few more weeks. So
we got 2 weeks before pitchers and catchers.
Oh, the four most beautiful words in the English language. Pitchers and catchers report.
So, but yeah, Robin will be doing some articles for the Ohana Packers site, which you can find at ohanapackers.org. We've got a lot of things planned coming up. We're signing on some new writers. We're signing on some content creators. Big things coming out, so be on the lookout for that. Please, if you give us a like, give us a subscribe. We're on YouTube. We're on wherever you find your favorite podcasts. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, whatever,
shove it up your butt.
Yeah, what he said. But really, I have no problems getting in a Twitter war with anybody, so send them my way and we can battle it out whenever you want to.
And then you can shove it up your butt.
Exactly. We're looking at you, Tom Silverspoon. But yeah, anyway, be sure to send us anything you want. We will review it all. We will respond. We will talk to you. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you want to hear from us, because we are getting to that point of the year where there is no content to be discussed. So we're going to be relying more and more on you guys. But that's all we got for you this week. Mike would give you an aloha, but I'm not Hawaiian, so I'm not going to do that. All I'm going to do is say go Pack Go, and I will see you guys later.